Hello everyone, welcome to Genius Blossom. Now we are continuing with the second part of our lesson, the Fundamental Unit of Life, Chapter 5, Science CBSE Class 9. In the previous part, we studied the discovery of cells, the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms, and the structure and function of plasma membrane. In this part, we will begin with an important feature found only in plant cells, the cell wall, and then move on to nucleus and cytoplasm in detail. This is the cell wall. In addition to the plasma membrane, plant cells, they have a strong, rigid outer covering called the cell wall. Cell wall, it acts as a protective shield and giving shape, strength and support to the plant cell. It is made up of cellulose. Cellulose, it is a complex carbohydrate. That is, cell wall is found only in plant cells. It is the outermost rigid layer of plant cells. It is made of cellulose. It provides structural strength and protection, gives definite shape to the cell. When a living plant cell loses water through osmosis, there is shrinkage or contraction of the contents of the cell away from the cell wall, and this phenomenon is known as plasmolysis. Then why cell loses water through osmosis? Because it is placed in a hypertonic solution, so it loses water. That is, if we place a living cell in a hypertonic solution, what happens? The water move out of the cell into the surrounding media. So we can define plasmolysis as the shrinkage or contraction of the cell contents away from the cell wall due to the loss of water through osmosis when placed in hypertonic solution. Or plasmolysis, it is the process in which the cell membrane pulls away from the cell wall because of the loss of water through osmosis. To observe plasmolysis, let us understand a simple activity using rheolleaves. Take a fresh rheolleaf, peel off the lower epidermis, observe it under a microscope to see the normal cell. Put a strong solution of salt or sugar on it, observe under the microscope. Then what will you see? You will see plasmolysis, and this happens because water moves out of the living cells due to osmosis, and this shows that living cells can perform osmosis. And this diagram shows how a living plant cell changes when placed in plasmolysing solution, that is concentrated salt or sugar solution. A normal cell, and this cell is full of water and the cell membrane is pressed tightly against the cell wall. B and C shows the beginning of plasmolysis. Here water starts moving out of the cell through osmosis, and the cytoplasm and cell membrane begin to shrink away from the cell wall. And the D shows plasmolysed cell, that is, a lot of water has left the cell and the cell membrane has completely pulled away from the cell wall, and this condition is called plasmolysis. Take another similar leaf and place it in boiled water for 2 to 5 minutes. This kills the cells. Now place this boiled leaf in the same concentrated solution and observe it under a microscope. Then no plasmolysis is seen there. That is, the cell structure, it remains the same because dead cells cannot perform osmosis. That is, only living cells and not dead cells are able to absorb water by osmosis. That is, this proves that osmosis occurs only in living cells. Why the cells of plants, fungi and bacteria withstand greater changes in the surrounding medium than animal cells? The cells of plants, fungi and bacteria, they have a cell wall. When these cells, they are in a very dilute solution, water enters by which process? Osmosis. Water enters by osmosis and makes the cell swell. But the cell wall stops them from bursting by pushing back with equal pressure. So, this strong wall helps them survive big changes in the surrounding medium, unlike animal cells which do not have a cell wall. Now let us study the structure and function of nucleus. We cannot see the cell organelles clearly without staining. To make them visible, we use stains like iodine solution, safranin or methylene blue. And just like we observe cells in onion peel, we can also observe the nucleus in human cheek cells using a microscope after staining. The nucleus, it is a dark colored round or oval structure found near the center of each cell. That is, the dark colored round or oval structure seen at the center of each cell is called a nucleus. It is surrounded by a double layered covering called the nuclear membrane. The outer covering of the nucleus, it is called a nuclear membrane, and it consists of two layers. The nuclear membrane, it has small openings or pores, that is called nuclear pores, and these nuclear pores allow the exchange of materials between the nucleus and cytoplasm. That is, the nucleus is surrounded by a double layered covering called the nuclear membrane, and the nuclear membrane has small openings called nuclear pores, and these nuclear pores allow the transfer or exchange of materials from inside the nucleus to the outside of the nucleus, that is to the cytoplasm. The nucleus contains chromosomes. Chromosomes become visible as rod-shaped structures only when the cell is about to divide. Chromosomes carry hereditary information from parents to the next generation. So, who carry hereditary information? Chromosomes, they carry the hereditary information from one generation to the other generation, and this information, it is present in the form of DNA. What is DNA? DNA is a type of nucleic acid, and it is called deoxyribonucleic acid. There are two types of nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. RNA is ribonucleic acid and DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. And these chromosomes, they are made up of DNA and protein, and this DNA, it contains the information needed to construct and organize the cell, and the functional units or the functional segments of DNA are called genes. So what are genes? Genes are the functional segments of DNA which carry the necessary informations for the construction and organization of the cell, or which carry the hereditary informations from parents to the next generation. And in a non-dividing cell, the chromosome and DNA, it is present as chromatin material. Chromosomes are found in a non-dividing cell as a coiled structure called chromatin material. Chromatin, it appears as a tangled mass of thread-like structures in the nucleus, and before cell division, just before cell division, the chromatin material, it organizes into rod-shaped chromosomes. That is, the nucleus contains chromosomes which carry hereditary information in the form of DNA, and these chromosomes are made of DNA and proteins, and they control the structure and function of the cell. So, we call the nucleus as the controlling center or the brain of the cell. And when the cell is not dividing, the DNA, it is present as chromatin, or the chromosomes are present as chromatin, that is thin thread-like material. And just before division, what happens to the chromatin? This chromatin, it condenses into rod-shaped structure called chromosomes, and these chromosomes become clearly visible under a microscope during the division stage. In some organisms like bacteria, the nucleus is not clearly defined, or nucleus is poorly defined, because there is no nuclear membrane, or it lacks a nuclear membrane, and this central region which contains only nucleic acids, or this undefined nuclear region which contains only nucleic acids, is called a nucleoid. And organisms with a nucleoid, or organisms without a nuclear membrane in the nuclear region, are called prokaryotes. And the word prokaryote means, pro means primitive or primary, and karyote means nucleus. So prokaryotes are organisms with a primitive nucleus, or they are organisms with no true nucleus. And the organisms with a true nucleus, that is, true nucleus means they have a nuclear membrane and they are called well defined nucleus, that is, nucleic acids and nuclear membrane are there, and such type of organisms with a well defined or true nucleus are called eukaryotes. Eu means true or well defined. So organisms with a true nucleus are called or well defined nucleus are called eukaryotes. Organisms with a primitive nucleus are called prokaryotes, and organisms with a true nucleus or well defined nucleus are called eukaryotes. And these prokaryotic cells, they lack most of the cell organelles found in the eukaryotic cells. In the eukaryotic cells, there are so many cell organelles like plastids, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, etc. And these organelles, they are absent in prokaryotic cells, and in photosynthetic prokaryotic bacteria, chlorophyll is present, but it is not present in the plastid chloroplast. It is present in certain vesicles. This chlorophyll is present in certain vesicles. Vesicles means bag like structures, that is, they are not present in plastids or chloroplast are seen in the eukaryotes. That is, in prokaryotes, the cell functions are carried out by poorly organized regions of the cytoplasm. In both onion peel and cheek cell slides, the region inside the cell membrane which takes up very little stain is called the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm, it is the fluid part inside the cell membrane found in all cells. That is, the cytoplasm, it is the fluid content enclosed by the cell membrane or plasma membrane. It contains various organelles that carry out specific functions for the cell to keep the cell working, or it contains many specialized cell organelles, each performing specific functions. In eukaryotic cells, these organelles are enclosed by membranes. That is, both nuclear membrane and membrane bound organelles are present in which type of organism or which type of cells? Eukaryotic cells. What about prokaryotes? In prokaryotic cells, both a defined nucleus and membrane-bound organelles are absent. That is, prokaryotes, they do not have a true nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. Like that, viruses which do not have membranes at all, they are not considered fully alive until they enter a living host and use its cell machinery to reproduce. That is, viruses lack membranes, so they do not show life characteristics unless they enter a living cell. Here is a table illustrating differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. I hope you enjoyed the video class. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you.